a topic that has the ability to either tear a community down or build it up. The topic is politics. It's one of those areas that we're told not to really tap into when you're in the workplace or if you're in a new group of people and you don't really know their standings. In this political climate, you want to ask a couple of questions that are just really sitting on our souls. There's no one better to ask these questions to but Ed Gordon. Ed has a show on the Impact Network called Impact the Vote, where he discusses issues within the Black community, how there are certain things that we need to address within our community to make sure that the politicians that we put in place are actually doing the same thing. So in speaking with Ed, we just got a lot of questions out and got a lot of answers. So I want to ask a question that I couldn't find online first before we get into your interview about the politics. What made you want to get into journalism, and then not only get into journalism, do it in a political aspect?
Well, I mean, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer initially. I've always liked to talk, I guess. And so I used to watch all the, back in the day, Perry Mason and LA Law and all of these things. And so, you dream of having that dramatic moment in the courtroom. And then I went to college, and some of my communications professors said, "Hey, I think you'd be good at this." And so started looking into this, and lo and behold, I went this route and really haven't looked back. I used to admire people like Bryant Gumbel and Ed Bradley and Dan Rather and many others. And it's just been a great ride for me, man.
Yeah. Have you had interviews that you wish you could do over?
No, I mean, if you're prepared,
yeah,
you do the best you can do, and that's a moment in time, and you move forward. I did learn very early on. I was in my 20s, and this is when apartheid was going on, and people in the United States were protesting. And I thought I knew the subject. And so I didn't really do homework for this interview. And it was a brother from South Africa. And we started doing the interview, and it was painfully obvious I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And I remember him looking at me like, "You don't know what you're talking about." I knew the kind of surface stuff.
Right.
And I promised myself from that point on, I would never be in that position again.
Right.
So really a great thing for me at the end of the day for my career. It was embarrassing that night.
Yeah.
But it was a great thing for me that it was a lesson learned.
Yeah, it takes that train wreck of the interview to make you realize you got to get it together.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it takes that, but I certainly had to have it.
All right. Now, when we get into our political system right now and where we're at as Black men, do you feel that we truly as Black men understand the importance of voting and what this is doing with our lives and our children's lives in the future?
I don't know that most people know that. I don't know that most people connect the dots. I wouldn't just raise that question for Black men. I think that people don't always understand the importance of voting and how it affects your day to day, particularly presidential elections. They see this as kind of big pie in the sky, and you're electing this person to be in the office and kind of control the country, so to speak.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, Black men, to answer more specifically your question, do, I believe, need to be more engaged in politics and more vocal. We saw Black women do it, and now it's their, mantra along with Black Girl Magic and the whole nine, and they become a true political force. And I think that we have been maybe a little docile and quiet with our ability to move politically. And so I'd love to see us become more educated, more vocal, and have a stronger collective political muscle.
Yeah. What I'm noticing now is that a lot of the conversations that I'm hearing amongst our, I guess what you'll call them celebrity and like higher influential people, the conversations are misguided. So a lot of the, we're not voting until we get what we want, or, this vote might not matter, or that kind of thing. When you hear that kind of dialogue, how do you redirect that?
Listen, I think the truth of the matter is celebrities are people, right? So you have in your group of friends, you have a couple of people who are very politically astute. and they follow politics. They don't just follow it on the news, but they follow politics, right?
Right.
Then you have a couple of cats that don't follow it at all, and you're wondering when they try to jump in, what are you talking about? And you got people who, like most vote, the average voter will pick a side and then they go vote. So I don't think the celebrities are any different, other than they have a larger platform and sway people that way. So
Right.
I think that we have to be discerning who we decide to listen to and follow. Right? It ain't the celebrity's fault. They can say whatever they want to say. You know, they can be as misguided as some of your friends may be, and certainly some of your acquaintances and coworkers. You know, you look at them sometimes. You know, I still can't figure out if you're black, how you're a Trump supporter. I really don't understand. Not a Republican. I understand that you can be whatever you want. I don't understand
Right.
how you are a Trump supporter after all that he's shown you. But you know, celebrities can be misguided too. So I try to look at it that way, and I try to tell people just be an educated voter. There are some celebrities who are very politically astute. They're like everybody else. And I would say that you listen to them. And then if you have a celebrity who's telling you some crazy stuff, I think you need to make some determinations, because ultimately it's up to you,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you know, politicians, there's some politicians who shouldn't be politicians. You know, do you listen to them
Absolutely.
just because they're a politician?
Right.
So I think that ultimately it falls on you to determine who you follow, what you listen to, and how you filter information.
Right. And then even with that, with the new age and like technology and internets and, social media, how does the average person weed through the BS and the lies of politics and like find the truths, because it's just so cluttered with
It's cluttered, but it's always been cluttered. We just inundate it more, right? So, I mean, you know, it really is the determination of whether or not you are going to be an educated voter. I go back to that. How many times before social media did people go to the polls and they voted for people they had no idea about? So when you vote your local election, do you really know who your sheriff's going to be? Do you know
right.
anything about the person you voted for, or who sits on your, state Supreme Court, or who even is your representative in Congress? Forget
Yeah.
state, but do you know your national representative in Congress, right? So I tell folk all the time, if you're going to just vote party line because your parents were Democrats, then okay, that's what most people do,
Hmm.
right? They grew up in a home that was either Republican or Democrat, and that's what they become. I
Right.
mean, I remember my mother was straight Democrat. She hated Republicans. Ronald Reagan could have found a cure for cancer and freed all black people. She still wouldn't have liked that dude. So, at the end of the day, it's really on you, the voter. It's not about the foolishness out there. It's not about how much is, because most people don't even take the time to become educated. So
Yeah.
for me, it's just being realistic. Most people vote because they're party affiliated or they like that person, right?
Yeah.
I'm intrigued that our people loved Kamala for the second seat, but they weren't crazy about her when she ran for the first seat. That's
Hmm.
intriguing to me.
Hmm.
How can you really, Black Girl Magic, we love her. Well, she had a chance to lead the ticket, but you weren't fully behind her then.
Right.
Politics is always an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it's bad. I had a conversation with some friends that we get to a point where we go into the polls and we vote if the name looks black. So if it looks like a black person, it's like, okay, we'll vote for you, and have no idea who we're putting in office. Just again because it's uneducated voting at that point and uninformed voting. So it's anybody can end up in office because we just don't know, and that's again why most people don't even turn
We
out for
saw
office.
that in Ferguson with the district attorney there who'd been voted for over and over and over again.
Right.
And he had shown himself to be racially biased for many years. And Ferguson certainly had the numbers had they turned out to get rid of that man, McCollum, a long time ago.
Yeah.
Same thing when we look to Kentucky and, the AG there.
Yeah.
He was elected. That's an elected spot. So now um, next go round whether you want to vote for that man or not.
Absolutely. When it comes to community, and before you had, the NAACP, the SCLC, that kind of thing. Now you have so many different smaller organizations that are typically divided from the masses of the Black community. How do you bring that back together so that you can have a singular political voice or a unified voice
I don't know that we ever really had that. I mean, that we had a bigger voice in the sense of those organizations that you mentioned were kind of our power players, but not everyone has followed the NAACP. There was certainly strife over the years between Black Muslims, for instance, and mainstream political parties and the like.
Right.
I do think the generation that I grew up with had leaders who were bigger than life. So you had a Ben Hooks at the NAACP, or Dorothy Height, or Jesse Jackson and the like. And now you don't have that same kind of gigantic leadership from 5 or 6 people. You have a myriad of folks who have their own little corners. And if you are now a person who controls social media with a large following, you become a leader just because of that.
Right.
I don't know which is better, right? What I do know is that, again, going back to what I said, we all need to be careful. I don't think you should have followed the NAACP or the SCLC years ago if you didn't really do your homework and figure out what they were doing.
Hmm.
Um, I wrote a book recently, Conversations in Black, and we within it we talked to 40 leaders and influencers. I mean, literally everybody from T.I. and Killer Mike to Eric Holder and Stacey Abrams, Jamel Hill, Angela Rye, and everybody in between. And it's written as if we were all holding a conversation together, though none of us were in the same room.
Right.
But throughout the book, I talk about new narratives and needing to find better ways to move forward. If you look at the last quarter century, Black America, individuals have made strides.
Hmm.
You have Oprah, you have Tyler Perry, you have Beyonce, you have people on the nightly news now who look like us, and cable. But as a whole, as a community, we made no real strides. In some areas,
Yeah.
we digressed. So at some level, Black leadership has to take some ownership to it. I put leadership in quotes. Um, but I'm not sure that we'll ever go back to that singular voice. We've been looking for King for a long time and Malcolm for a long time. They ain't coming through the door. It's a different day.
Yeah.
And so we need to determine how best we move forward as a people. I'm not sure that any of us have that answer yet, but I'm not necessarily about cancel culture or arguing about you ain't doing it right. My thing is, you do you, find like-minded people and do the best you can do for us. So if you are working for Black people in the best, most positive way, though I may not agree with
Hmm.
it, as long as it's not destructive, I'm down for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So elections coming up. What's your message to the community?
Vote. It's real simple. It's vote and then become engaged. People think that election day is your last day to be involved. And election day really
Yeah.
should be your first day, particularly if your
Yeah.
candidate gets in. If your candidate gets in, now you need to demand for your vote. You know, for too long, we just voted and we were happy that our guy got in or our woman got in, and then that was it. And then we might have
Right.
gotten mad because they didn't do. Well, they didn't have to do because you never demanded anything. So the reality
Right.
for us
Right.
is we got to vote, and then we have to demand. It's that simple. It's that simple.
So, when it's all said and done, politics are about your opinion. It's about your decision, your responsibility of finding out who you're voting for, your responsibility of educating yourself about the system, about the laws, about the circumstances in which we vote. It's up to us. We can't really turn to an entertainer and have them give us an opinion. They can't give us a standpoint. They can't give us our understanding. They can be on our side or maybe help us look at things from a different point of view. But when it comes down to it, it's on us. It's on us to tap into ourselves, find out what it is that we believe. Why do we believe these things? Why are we passionate about these things? Where are we willing to bend? And then we vote. As Ed said, change doesn't just happen the moment that your candidate is in office. That's when change begins. At that point, it's your responsibility to get in there and hold your politicians accountable. If that's your guy, this is what you want them to do. Now it's time to start making demands. It's time to get involved with your community organizations. It's time to get involved with different political groups and find out how to make things happen in your neighborhood to give you a better life. Politics aren't perfect. No politician is going to be perfect. No one goes into office to make things perfect. They get in office to make it better. It's our job to hold them to that standard and say, this is what better looks like for us. Are you going to meet it? It's election week. So either hopefully you got out there and you voted early, or you're gonna go vote on election day. Regardless, it's important that you vote first and then work on making the changes afterwards. As always, y'all spread some love and stay suave. Peace.